If you work with wood or if you have fine pieces in your home, you'll know that veneer is the really, really good wood that they put on the top, and it's a pretty thin layer. And if you ever have redone a piece of old antique furniture, you know that you have to be careful. You can't sand too far or you'll sand through the veneer and get to the less desirable wood underneath. And if you just can't scratch the top of the veneer without getting through. And that's how I think it is with civilization. That's how I think it is with civility. This thin veneer of civil behavior is so easily and so often broken through. It happens all the time. We see it anytime there's a disaster, say a tornado or a hurricane, and then we see the looting, right? And you can put in your favorite evil one there. You can put in the person that you hate the most, the person you're most afraid of, right? The group that you don't like. Whoever that is, those are the people that come out once the veneer of civilization is sort of scratched through. The approaching hordes, the unwashed masses. Our common life depends on civility. And without it, there's a breakdown of society, a loss of this idea that they used to teach when I was in school, they no longer teach. We used to have a class on it, citizenship. This idea that we belong in a community and in a society, and society requires us, in order to function at its best, to sort of watch what we do in relation to others. Without it, we're just really all subject to this crowd mentality. Right? That's what's going on. Crowds, you see, are powerful tools. You have to look no further than the current political campaigns. Everyone trying their hardest and spending as much money as they have, money that they will never have, in order to capture you into the crowd that will do their bidding. Right? Collective opinions are powerful. Crowds can determine outcomes. Crowds can organize and become powerful on their own right, in their own right. Crowds can become mobs. Crowds armed can become gangs. Crowds armed well can become armies. Crowds can become labor unions. Crowds can become movements. I think of Martin Luther King. I think of Gandhi. Crowds are powerful because they create fear in leaders. Now, maybe it's just me, but I tend to see life in terms of winners and losers. I'm naming for you one of my deep sins, frankly. I see everything in terms of a conflict. And I'm not proud of it. It's just the way I am. And frankly, it causes me difficulty in most relationships that I'm in. If there's a conflict, I tend to see things in terms of winners and losers. And that's what's going on today in our text, where we see this clear conflict between religious authorities and government authorities. And both are afraid of the crowd, and both use the crowd to their advantage. And my question is, which side is God on? On one side you have Annas and Caiaphas, the religious leaders, who have a stake in what's going on because they have power. And they're saying to Jesus, they're demanding of Jesus, what are you teaching? What is this teaching you have? It seems dangerous. On the other side you have Pilate, this authority of the state, who also has something at stake. And he's demanding of Jesus, what is your authority? Where is your kingdom? Why are they afraid of you? Do you need to be controlled? Should I be afraid of you too? And we get this classic battle, this winner or loser conflict set up. Sanhedrin versus Rome, Caiaphas versus Pilate, church versus state, order versus chaos. They're fighting each other, but they're also fighting to maintain the order and avert the chaos that might come if the crowd takes over. And Jesus represents a movement. Jesus represents a revolution. And it's that revolution that threatens both the Sanhedrin and the Romans. So it's really a triangle. It's the Sanhedrin against Rome, and both of them against this revolutionary. Who wins, do you think? Who decides who wins? Here's what it comes from the text. Here's what the text says. Pilate, what charge do you bring against this man? Crowd, he's a criminal. Pilate, what's his crime? Crowd, blasphemy. Pilate, not good enough. Crowd, sedition. And now we pass the point of no return. The crowd takes on a life of its own. The crowd takes over, and the crowd cries out, "Crucify!" Do you see how cleverly it worked? Do you see how they were used? The Sanhedrin wins, and Rome wins, and order is restored, and crisis averted, and one man killed, just as Caiaphas had predicted, to save them all. Power maintained, order restored, no one gets hurt. It's a win-win, except which side is God on? The crowd has been used to accomplish the purpose. Tonight, like the early witnesses to this event, like the early readers of John's Gospel, like every reader since and every reader to come after us, I encounter Christ, and I must decide who Jesus is and what Jesus means. And I can tell you that there is no question tonight which side I'm on. I'm on the side of the revolutionary. But it turns out that this is no way to run a revolution. Right? The cross turns out to be a pretty lousy weapon of warfare. Don't get me wrong, it can be co-opted and it can be corrupted. But as a pure witness of the pain and the suffering and the death of Jesus, and the notion that anyone who would follow Jesus must expect to be treated in the same way he was, that doesn't go very far in gaining recruits. So for 2,000 years, we've read this story and we've struggled to make sense of it. If Jesus was God, and if God is powerful and loving, and if God wants to act powerfully to restore creation to its intended perfection, why did God's side lose? As I struggled with that question this week, it occurred to me that we have gathered quite a new crowd over the past 2,000 years. What would happen if we refused to be pacified? What would happen if we refused to be domesticated or used by any side for political purposes? What if we are the crowd that God intended to gather all along? Maybe this thing isn't over yet.